Hi everyone, I'm Will Brown and welcome to the WPQuickies series, bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. So today I am talking about WordPress database optimization. So thanks for taking the time to join me on this quite sunny Sydney afternoon, and welcome to those overseas and those watching on replay. Drop down who you are in the comments down below. Let me know who you are, where you're coming in from, just while we get started on this this WP Quickie session. While you're doing that, if you are viewing on YouTube, if you can hit the subscribe button and click on that little bell, then you'll get notified of my latest video updates. And we'll see who we've got coming in today. We've got quite a few people in the waiting list. So we've got Jonathan, excuse me. So Jonathan Cooper, hi from the Central Coast. Hi, Jonathan. And Jean from Lisa Row in New South Wales. Thank you so much, guys, for spending your time with me this afternoon. Okay, this one is about database optimization. Now, this one's been requested by quite a few people in the kind of the general how do you speed up WordPress topic. It's got Mr. Meowpuss. How are you doing? And Joey J from Singapore as usual. Thank you so much, guys. These are regular viewers tuning in. Okay, I am going to get started because I've got quite a lot of slides to get through. Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining. So yeah, let's jump in because I'm basically going to try and get this done in 30 minutes, but there's an awful lot of data here. Okay, let's make that a little bit bigger. Okay, a quick story. I'm sure you'll enjoy that. Dow, g'day from Sydney as well. A few years ago, I performed a website audit for a WordPress WooCommerce store. Now, they were on their third hosting company and couldn't understand why their website was performing poorly. And one of the web hosting companies was one of the more expensive ones. So I did a quick audit of their website. I had a look at the database, and a quick look was all I needed to figure out why the website was so slow. Now, they had thousands of entries in their WP_post table, but only a handful of published posts on their actual website. And the WP options table was almost about 2 gigabytes in size. Now, they also had a login plugin, which was writing every WordPress event directly to the database, and their tables were about 1 gigabyte as well. So after I'd optimized the database by removing all the post revisions and orphaned posts and tens of thousands of expired transients, their website speed increased from a sluggish 12 seconds to just 1.2 seconds load time. And that was for their main shop. So they were pretty happy with that. So why am I telling you this story? Well, database optimization, it's a vital component in website maintenance to help your website's overall performance. So don't shirk it. Just make sure that you're looking at the database often. And today we're going to run through just some simple tips on how to keep your database all nice and smooth and running optimized. Okay, let's make this one bigger. So if you install a fresh WordPress installation, it installs the following 11 WordPress core tables. And I'll just copy a link. Now there's a link here to the WordPress.org link, and it just gives you a little bit more information about the tables in the WordPress database. But basically, we've got WP comment meta, so that stores the meta information for comments. We've got the WP comments for comments, and we've got WP links. Now, WP links, I don't know if you've been using WordPress for that long, but back before version 3.5, you could actually add links, external links, into the database, and then you could refer to them on your posts and pages. That feature's kind of been scrapped, but for whatever reason, the database still creates that table there, but it's unused now. WP options, so that stores all the options in the admin area of your WordPress dashboard and a lot of other stuff. So a lot of plugins use and store all their options in that table as well. WP post meta, so that stores your meta information about the posts, and then WP posts, which stores the actual posts for posts, pages, and other custom post types. WP terms, so that stores a list of tags and categories. That's your taxonomy for posts and links. WP term relationships. So that stores the relationship between a post and its category or tag, or between links and link categories. WP term taxonomy, that stores the taxonomy labels in the WP term table, and it creates a reference between those. WP user meta, that stores meta information, metadata about the users, and WP users, that stores a list of all the users in your database. So that's the 11 core database tables in WordPress. So why should you bother optimizing your WordPress database? Well, it's all about speed, efficiency, and speed. The less stuff you have in your database, the faster the functions are going to be able to get the data out. So by optimizing your WordPress database, especially if you've had your WordPress for quite a few years, it can increase your speed significantly. So we're going to look at some optimizations over this 30-minute period. Okay, so what kind of data fills up the core WordPress database? Well, the usual offenders, and we're not talking about all these additional plugins, this is just the WordPress core on its own. So the usual offenders for quickly increasing the size of WordPress core database tables are things like post revisions, spam comments, orphaned post metadata, expired transients, and trash. And we're going to look at some of those just now. Okay, so the best tool to check your database, so if you're looking to figure out how big your WordPress tables are to see if you've got an issue, the best tool to use is the phpMyAdmin tool. Now, most web hosts will offer a link to this through their web hosting control panel, like cPanel or Plesk. Now, if your hosting company doesn't have a link to phpMyAdmin, then that's all right. You can install this plugin in the link on the comments there. So it's called WP phpMyAdmin, and it just loads in the interface into WordPress and allows you to click through a link so you can have the phpMyAdmin tool right on your website. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So how do you check the database sizes using phpMyAdmin? Well, first of all, make sure that you've got the correct database selected. And you've probably only got one, but if you've got a staging server on your hosting account, you might have two or three different tables. So make sure you've got the right one for your production website. And then once you've selected on that, then you'll see all the tables that are in the WordPress database. Now, sometimes there's going to be more tables because some plugins will create their own tables. But you should see a list of at least the WordPress core 11 tables. Now, along the interface at the top, you've got table, you've got action, you've got rows, type, collection, size, and overhead. Now, you want to click on rows, and that will sort each table into the highest number of rows. So the more rows you have, the more data that's stored in the database table. But you can also sort it by size. So sometimes having thousands of rows of small bits of data doesn't mean that it's a huge table. And sometimes you can have some database tables that store huge amounts of information. So when you're trying to look at the size of your tables, have a look at both of those. So rows, you can sort them by highest to lowest, and for size as well, highest to lowest. So you can see which tables you probably need to have a look at and try and optimize a little bit further. Okay, so for this talk, we're going to be using the WP Optimise plugin. Now, you can use other plugins if you like. There's WP Rocket. There's also WP Sweep, I think. A couple that come to the top of my mind. But WP Optimise, we're going to be using that for the screenshots for this little quickie session here. So I'm going to run through the next few slides pretty quickly because I think it's fairly obvious what we're doing. Okay, so first one is optimizing your database table overhead. Now, if we go back, I'm going to go back a couple of slides. This one here. So see on the very right-hand side column, it's called overhead. There's a little arrow pointing to that. So overhead is the little bit of data, of the space in the table that can be created when you're updating and removing data in the database itself. So it can leave a little bit of information, a little bit of space, which means your database is a little bit bigger. So we want to get rid of that. So you can perform this task using the WP Optimise. So if you go to WP Optimise and then the database setting, it brings up a list of all these options that you can basically a one button click, which is great. So the option here selected is Optimize Database Tables. and then you just click on the Run Optimization. What that'll do is it'll copy, if you've got a MySAM encoded engine, which is the old type of table encoding, then it'll optimize that. If it's a new InnoDB storage engine, which you should be using, what it does is actually creates a new table, and then it copies all the information from the old table into the new table and renames it back to the old one, and that gets rid of all the overhead. So that's a really quick one to do. There's usually not a lot of overhead, but if you can shrink down the database even a little bit, then it's going to help with performance. The next one here is optimizing post revisions. Now, by default, WordPress keeps an unlimited number of post revisions. That's changes. Now, post revisions are helpful if you need to undo some content that you just saved, but you don't need to keep post revisions from like 5 or 10 years ago. That's just silly. So you can limit the amount of post revisions that WordPress keeps by adding the following line, or that line that's at the top, to your theme's functions.php file. So that's define wp_post_revisions, and then a number of revisions you want to keep. So I've got that down at 3, which is good for me, but you can change that to 0, you can change it to 1 or 10, or however you're comfortable working with. Yes, Eric, always back up the database before you go poking around with it. Good call. Now, most of the functions that this WP Optimize offers, you can also do it in phpMyAdmin as SQL statements. So if you need that kind of flexibility to do that, then most of these functions are callable by SQL. So I've just dropped that little line for your functions.php, and that'll reduce all the number that WordPress creates for revisions going forward. However, we want to delete all the old ones. So this WP Optimize has this button here, and it's the one with the arrow selected. Clean all post revisions. It says it's detected 6 in the database, and then you just click on that button, and it gets rid of all those post revisions, which shrinks down your database immensely. Now, if you want to do that in SQL, and I'm not going to copy the SQL for all of this, I'm going to release a post with this video embedded, and it's got a lot more information on the SQL statements. But that's the SQL statement that you want to run if you want to do it in phpMyAdmin. But why would you when you've got this lovely plugin that just allows you to click one button? So that's optimizing post revisions. Get rid of them. You'll probably find if you've got an old WordPress website, you've got a WordPress blogging website that you've been using for a few years, you're going to have a lot of post revisions in there if you've not got that line in your functions.php file. Okay, moving on. Optimizing comments. So there's a couple of commands here in WP Optimize for dealing with comments. Those are the ones with the arrows there. Now, there's an option to remove spammed and trashed comments, which, if you're not using a Kismet or any other spam checker, then that's probably a useful tool to have, because they will accumulate if you're not keeping on top of comment moderation. But there's also another one that says remove unapproved comments. Now, why would you want to use that one? Well, I've done quite a few website audits where people have been blogging for many, many years, and they've got thousands and thousands of comments, and it's just got on top of them, and they've left it for years, and now they've suddenly got 10, 20,000 unapproved comments. Now, some of those will be genuine comments. Most of them will probably be spam, but, these people don't have, 6 weeks of their life to go through every single comment. So sometimes you just want to blast them all. So there's an easy option there. Click the button and it removes all the unapproved comments from those. And of course, it will get rid of some genuine comments. But, if you've got thousands and thousands of unapproved comments and you don't have the time to go through them, this is probably your best option for getting rid of them and squashing down the database size as well. Okay, next up, we have optimizing orphaned metadata. Now, you might not have come across this before. And so WordPress does a pretty good job of tidying up after itself if you delete a post or a page, but things can and do go wrong. So sometimes when post meta can be left behind in the database when a parent post is deleted. And that is called orphaned data or orphaned metadata. So there's 3 options that WP Optimize offers to deal with orphaned data in database. One is for post metadata, so that's your posts and pages and custom post types. So you can run that, and that'll get rid of any metadata that's associated with posts that don't exist in the database. The other one is for claiming cleaning comment metadata as well, so we can get rid of that type of data. Let's block that comment there. And the third one is clean orphaned relationship data. So this is when you're using a lot of categories and tags, and maybe you've got some custom taxonomies as well, and you've been deleting them and WordPress hasn't cleaned it up. So you can run the optimization on that one as well. So that's all the sort of metadata. So posts, categories, and taxonomies, you can clean those up, which is fantastic. And it's great that they have like a one button click for these. Okay, next one is optimizing expired transients. Now, again, you might not have heard of transients if you are a new WordPress user or if you're not a developer. But transients, they're basically a type of temporary data caching system. And they're kind of used by plugins and theme developers and the WordPress core app just to store temporary bits of data as a cache. So it saves them having to call those functions again. They just go and grab the data from there. So when a transient expires, because they usually have an expiry date, WordPress should delete it from the database. However, sometimes that process fails. For example, two big plugins like WooCommerce and LearnDash plugins, they use many transients, and they can quickly lead to big database bloat. So this is a handy thing to do. If you have a quick look at the option here, the one with the arrow, so you've got removed expired transients, which is the default run that this function will do. However, you can, if you find that you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of transients in your database, and you kind of think that you shouldn't have, you can click that other check mark to remove all transient options and not just those ones expired. So if you do find yourself with tens of thousands, that might be a quick fix for you. Just a quick note that if you are deleting all transients, then you're probably going to muck up some plugins along the line, especially things like WooCommerce and the cart process, or LearnDash and quizzes and things like that. Now, it's not the end of the day. You know, it's not the worst thing that can happen. But if you've got active users on your website, it can throw them a bit of a curveball if you start removing all the transients. So remove the expired ones first, and then just see how you go along from that. Okay, next one is optimizing trash and auto draft posts. Now, by default, when you delete a post using the WordPress user interface, it's going to sit in the trash can for 30 days, giving you enough time to perform a restore. Now, again, sometimes this process can fail if, for example, maybe the WP cron, that's the scheduling system in WordPress, isn't working correctly, and that trash can build up. So you want to try and remove those trashed items. So you can click on that button there and clean all those trash up. The other one here is the other option that's above the arrow. I've not highlighted that one. Is clean all auto draft posts. Now, auto draft is a relatively new thing that's come into WordPress. For each post that you're working on, post or page or custom post type, WordPress will auto-save. It'll save a draft every so often. I think it's every 60 seconds. It saves a draft to your database. Now, it's only one draft for the auto-save, so it's not going to build up and accumulate more and more over the time. However, if you've got hundreds of pages and hundreds of posts, and you've been editing them and WordPress hasn't cleaned up, then that could be a significant amount of data in the database. So the WP Optimise plugin, it has a little function there that you can clean all the auto draft posts. Now, it's not going to have any effect on your current posts or pages. It's just a draft. It's like what Google Docs use or what Microsoft does. They auto-save a little temporary file, and that's basically all it is. So it's not going to affect your live posts or your draft posts if you go delete those, but it could save you a little bit of database size. Okay, so here's another handy tool from this WP Optimise plugin that isn't in some of the other plugins that I mentioned, the WP Sweep or the Rocket, WP Rocket. It has a handy setting that you can actually find tables that are not currently being used by a theme or a plugin. I think that's fantastic. So this view here, which is in the tables tab, it can be a great way of finding out like old tables that have been left behind by plugins that you haven't used anymore. And so, if you've got quite a few of these, then if you remove all those tables, that's going to obviously optimize the database. It's going to decrease the size of the database there. Now, a big warning, of course, if you have plugins that are deactivated temporarily, and you run this tool here, it is going to show those tables as being inactive because the plugin is not active for those. And if you delete them, and then your plan is to reactivate the plugin at some point, then you're going to zap all your data. So be careful when you use this tool. Just make sure that the tables that you are deleting, the inactive ones, are for plugins that you haven't ever used or you've deleted before. But this is a great way of finding all these old tables that kind of hang around and don't do anything, and make your database a lot bigger and less inefficient. Okay, next one, and I think we're getting close to the end now. It's a little bit more advanced topic today. So, autoloaded data. Now, you might not be aware, but when the WordPress app initializes itself, and it does that on every page refresh, it automatically loads in some data from the WP options table in the database, and that's just for faster processing. So rather than, if you're having to run the function SQL to get the data out all the time, it auto-loads all this information into memory, and then it references that memory cache there. Now, this auto-loaded data, it can grow significantly over time, and it's not just the WordPress core, it's lots of plugins and themes that can set data to be auto-loaded as well. Now, if you use phpMyAdmin and navigate to the WP_options table, and if your database prefix table is a little bit different, then it'll be something other than WP_, but you want to look at the _options table in your database. Then you'll see that the very last column there is a column called autoload. And it's got two values. It's either yes or it's no. But those are all the values that WordPress is going to load automatically when it initializes on every page load. Now, it shouldn't be a lot for a new WordPress website, but again, if you've been using WordPress for 3 years, 5 years, you've had lots of plugins installed and stuff, then that amount of data being loaded in can grow quite significantly, and it can slow down WordPress. It's doing it on every page refresh when WordPress initializes. Now, this one's a little bit more techie, but there we go. I'll show you this here, and I've got a link to that particular code here. So what we're doing here is we're in phpMyAdmin, we're in the database, we're in the WP options table, and we don't have to be in the WP options, but this is the one we're at. I'm going to click the SQL tab, and I'm going to paste that SQL in there. So that SQL is just a language, a database language, and that's going to run a query. It's going to query the auto-loaded data in the database, and basically this is what you get back. Okay, so here are the results that I ran on one of my databases. You can see the results here. It's in the auto-loaded data in kilobytes. So all the data that's auto-loading in this particular database is 892 kilobytes, or 0.8 megabytes, which is not a lot, and it shouldn't be because this is just a brand new test website that I have. The next row, auto-loaded data count, actually tells you the number of items that WordPress is automatically loading in. So for this case, and it'll be different in yours, is 389 separate rows that it's loading into its caches for auto-loading for those. And the remaining 10 is the top 10 largest rows of data that it's loading in. So you can see the first one here is a whole string of numbers. So E3D5, I have no idea what that is, but it's basically loading in. It's the largest bit of data that WordPress loads in for this database, and it's coming in about 607K, or about 0.6 megabytes. So that's quite a bit for a temporary cache. It's loading every time you're refreshing your page. So that's something you probably want to investigate, either yourself or your developer, to see what that is, where it's come from, which plugin it's come from, what sort of data that's been storing, and does WordPress really need to load that in on autoload every time, or can you get rid of that in this particular instance? A little bit of extra code up on the screen, and again, this will be in the post that I'll post in a few weeks to complement this this video. So the first little bit of code there, and so if you want to unset any particular option, if you want to not load them in, that's a little bit of SQL code that you will call, and of course you place the option underscore name with whatever the option name is that you're coming back with. So in this graphic, it would be that E3D541 blah, 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 blah. That's the name of the data. So you put that in there and it would change that option from yes to no, and WordPress would not auto load that. So that's how you get rid of those. Or you could use phpMyAdmin and click on each one and then change that option from yes to no as well. So when you're finished doing all your autoload stuff, it's best practice to create an index. And that's the SQL, the second bit of SQL there at the bottom on the right-hand side. It basically creates an autoload index, which caches that information in the database, and then WordPress can pull that information out. It just makes it more efficient and more quicker. I don't know if more quicker is a good English, probably not. It makes it quicker anyway. So those few options there at the end, they were quite advanced, and you might not want to perform them. You don't have to, but certainly if you're kind of really into optimizing the database as much as you can, those are certainly ways that you can crawl back an extra few microseconds, and it all adds up, especially if you're doing those auto loads on every page refresh. And it's worthwhile just looking, see what type of data is loading in. So you might not have hundreds of data that you're auto loading in, but you might have like one or two that is huge, massive data, and that could be slowing down WordPress as well. Okay, so in summary, keeping your WordPress database optimized, it's going to improve your database performance, and that's going to lead to a faster website overall. And using a plugin like WP Optimize to perform all these tasks at a click of a button or schedule them to run regularly is a good thing to do. And you should definitely be building database optimization to your WordPress maintenance schedule, whether that's weekly, whether that's monthly. Hopefully it's more than it's not as much as yearly, but definitely have a look at the database as that little bit of extra optimization for faster speed. Okay, we did it in 28 minutes. That was a big one today. I'm going to cycle through some of the questions. Dewey says, yep, good call about the backup. What's the best backup app to do this? Well, I've got a post on my zeropointdevelopment.com website that I've got the best backup plugins from whatever year it was, 2020, 2019, and there's a whole list of them there. I use, what do I use? I use WordPress, which is not great because they moved over to Jetpack now. So you got to install Jetpack to use it. What other ones do that? There's Backup Buddy as well. Basically, there's like 4 or 5 kind of top backup ones. But if you go and look at zeropointdevelopment.com in the blog and search for best backups, I've got a whole post about all those different types of plugins for that. It's a great question. Let's see. Jonathan asks, would it be best to delete all transients in the middle of the night, assuming your visitors are in your time zone? Yep. So if you've got a quiet time, and in general, for all of these optimizations, because some of them are quite intensive, especially the transient ones, you want to try and do all these maintenance activities outside of your busiest website time. So that the time of your lowest visitors at the weekend, if it's Sunday at 1 a.m. or something like that, then yeah, delete those. But if you're deleting all transients, yep, great question, Jonathan. You should probably delete them when there's not any users on the website, because that's not going to impact them if you're deleting all that stuff. Eric asks, what if I have custom tables for my custom plugin? Yep, that's fine. So things like cleaning up the metadata, that'll work as well. For the WP Optimize, it will find all these custom tables and bring them in, and so you can optimize those ones as well. The Autoload as well, that just really applies to WP options. So even if you've got custom tables, that's not going to be an issue there. Now, the WP Optimize plugin, so it's not going to do optimization on every single custom table. I think it has a WooCommerce component built into it. But if you're using a plugin, for example, like the story at the beginning, the login, the client who had a logging plugin, it was basically just hammering every single WordPress event out to a log, a database table, and they had hundreds of users that were logging in and doing stuff. So it filled up to 1 gigabyte quite quickly for that. So that's something you want to keep an eye on. So that's what you want to, for your custom tables. Go and have a look at the, let's see, the largest ones, the largest tables there. So you want to check your database table sizes, Eric, using phpMyAdmin, and that particular view there just order them by rows or by size. And that phpMyAdmin, it doesn't care what tables are, if they're core, if they're not core, then you'll be able to see what sizes. So you'll be able to find if any of your custom plugin tables are kind of generating a lot of rows, or they're generating like big data in there. So thanks, Eric. Good question. Let's see. Eric asks, will it delete the custom tables? Well, no, it doesn't delete the custom tables, not until you have to go into phpMyAdmin. So if you have found inactive tables that aren't linked with a plugin or a theme, or if you've got your own custom tables that you are too big, then you can delete them from phpMyAdmin from that. Jean asks, would you systematically change table types from MyISAM to InnoDB? I would. I would change them from MyISAM to InnoDB. InnoDB, it's a type of storage engine for each table, and with the WordPress database, because it's got a lot of tables in, you can actually have mixed engines between all the different tables. Now, it's more efficient for the database server to have all the tables in the same engine, because when it's doing queries across tables, then it's got to do more work if the types of storage engines are different between those. And MyISAM, it is an older storage engine type. It does support the optimise natively for tables, but that particular function is not as good as all the good stuff you get with InnoDB as well. It's a faster storage engine, so all your queries are going to be significantly faster than if you're using the MyISAM. So yes, I would convert from MyISAM to InnoDB. You can do that within phpMyAdmin, and it shouldn't cause any issues with the data, because it's just a method of storage, and phpMyAdmin has the right ways to convert those between different engines. So great question, Jean. Thank you. Alan asks, were you using premium features today? No, that WP Optimise that's just the free one. Yeah, I think they do have a paid version, which probably does a lot more stuff, but just using the free one and those free options, then you're going to significantly improve the speed and efficiency of your database. Daniel asks, is it possible or common for these plugins to misreport an unused table? No, I don't think so. I've not had any issues with that. So I think Daniel's talking about the one where it's showing that the inactive tables. No, it looks through the code of all your WordPress plugins and themes, and it has a look to see if you're creating any tables with SQL or with the WordPress database. So and it tries to match that up with the tables in there. So I think that's fine, but do your due diligence. Don't just go willy-nilly deleting everything that it asks you for. Just do a double check to make sure that table is being used or it's not being used. Daniel asking, don't some hosting providers lock certain features for your database? So you had issues when swapping to DreamHost that some of these tables were too large for their format. Yes, I guess that could happen. So the database is running under a system called MySQL or MariaDB. They're kind of interchangeable nowadays. And it comes with a configuration file, and you can set limits on table sizes, on data sizes within the table items as well. And yes, I guess some hosts would have an upper lit on the database table size. That could be the case. Now, theoretically, MySQL doesn't really have an upper limit. I'm sure there is a limit where it groans and falls over, but in theory, there's not like a hard limit on the amount of data you can have per table. It just kind of goes up and up and up until the database server crashes. So if you are finding a limit, then that will be a limit with the host, and they could do that for performance reasons. There's really no reason why one of your tables should be like 6 or 10 gigabytes. Something's pretty wrong there, inefficient if that kind of data is being stored in the database. So yes, I guess, Daniel, yes, some hosting providers could maybe not lock features, but can certainly cap the data levels that the tables store. Eric asks, will the finding tables not used Okay, will the finding tables not used delete my custom tables? Okay, I'm not quite sure what you're asking there, Eric, but that tool, WP Optimise, it doesn't delete any of the tables. It just marks them as possibly not being used. So then, you would go into phpMyAdmin and manually delete those yourself if that's what you want to do. Okay, I'll do another few questions and then I'll just wrap up because we have gone like 5 minutes over. Jonathan asks, how do I tell what type my database tables are? You can check that within phpMyAdmin. Let's see if I've got a graphic here. I think this one at the beginning. There we go. So I have to make that a little bit bigger. So here we've got the database selected and it's showing all the tables. If you go and have a look, see the type. So we've got table, action, rows, and then type. The type tells you what database engine is running for that particular table. So this is an old client's website, and they've had it for quite a while, and you can see that most of them there are actually my ISAM. So it should probably be changed over to InnoDB at some point. I hope that's not the production site. Okay. Alan asks, he was using the advanced DB cleaner. Many of the functions they were not in their free version. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I find WP Optimise is pretty good for the free version. It's got a lot of features in there. So yeah, maybe switch over to that one, Alan. Jean says, check the type column. Yep, so that's the one we're just showing for there. Okay, guys, I am going to wrap this one up because there's some great questions, but we have gone a little bit over. And I want to really stick to time for these quickies. Next week, I am talking about browsers, so how to clear cache in browsers properly. Because I don't know about you, but certainly with myself working with clients, there's always support requests that come through to say, I've tried to load this page, it looks really weird, or I can't get this thing. So I'm always saying to them, clear your browser cache, and saying, how do you do that? So I'm going to cover that. So the kind of top browsers, how to properly clear your browser cache and to make sure you get the proper page. So that'll be next week. Again, if you've got any topics, please fill out the link below. There's a link below in the description for the video, and let me know what topics I can talk about in these quickies. And just a shout out for WPAustralia.org. So if you're looking for a WordPress meetup, and the physical meetups are restarting, Brisbane's got one going this month, I think, or beginning of next month. But WPAustralia.org, that tells you where all the WordPress meetups are, the online and the physical ones. And it's also got a link to join the Slack group as well, which is a little picture of that one there. It's like an online community where you can ask questions and just kind of get to know people in the WordPress community here in Australia. Hit me up as well. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you haven't done so already. I've got Instagram there that I sometimes use. And Twitter, which I probably rarely use. LinkedIn is probably the best way to get in touch with me. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will catch you all next week.